Honoring Black History Month, Queen City News presents The State of the Black Vote.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm Julian Sadur.
I'm Janet Parker.
And I'm Khalif Rhodes.
For the next half hour, we're focusing on a shift we've seen in the black vote.
Vice President Kamala Harris ran a historic campaign as the first black female presidential candidate. Where did voters fall short?
And we're sitting here discussing it with key players in local and federal government, as well as academia.
Joining us are Mecklenburg County Commissioner Board Chair Mark Jarrell, JCSU President Dr. Valerie Kinlock,
political strategist Bree Maxwell, and former 12th District Congressional GOP candidate Abdul Ali.
We're here in partnership with Johnson C. Smith University inside the Jane Smith Memorial Church.
We want to thank the JCSU staff and faculty for having us here, as well as each of our panelists for taking the time to be here. We want to start here. Exit polls show that 20% of black voters voted for President Trump in the last election. That is the largest shift that we've seen in terms of voting for a Republican president since 1960. County Chair, I want to start with you. Why do you think that is?
I mean, people feel unheard. People feel like their issues aren't being addressed. I think people are just turning to other alternatives. They're reaching out. They're trying to figure out where can they find change. And when you take a look at that, I think we need to understand, are we really listening to what people are saying?
Abdul, I'll go to you. From your end, why do you think there were so many black voters that decided to vote Republican after years of traditionally voting Democratic?
I think that years of statistically reliably voting a particular way and looking at the results or failure of results is a big part of it. But then you also look at, I think, the messaging from Trump and the Republicans this cycle wasn't one of necessarily identity politics. It was more of, we need to get this economy on track.
Were you on the ground? Did you see anything in terms of how the administration advertised itself to the black vote? Obviously, there's a bit of a blowback from when President Obama came and kind of admonished black men for not wanting to vote for presidential candidate Kamala Harris. What did you see from the community?
So when my parents and grandparents were probably, involved with the Democratic Party, it was more so because of, civil rights movement. So those were the issues that they were facing then. And so the issues that we as a generation are facing now are totally different. Like for me, I want to hear what you're going to do for education, healthcare, and crime and safety. You're going to want to hear other people that's going to want to know, what are you going to do for jobs? What are you going to do to make sure that my community is safe? What are you going to do about housing, safe and affordable housing? So I think it's more so generational, but I also think it's the message. And I don't think the Democratic Party had a bad message. It's just in some instances, the messenger can also be the problem.
Bree, we'll stick right with you on that. For years, generationally, it's been the black base, the black vote, the black voting bloc. But part of your last answer talked about how generational change kind of changed the way we vote. Is there still a black voting bloc?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are still high. Even though the numbers are shifting slowly, the numbers are still high. And I also think it goes back to what I said about the message and the messenger. So let's just say in 2028, when it's time for another election, even with midterms, if you put the right people in the field to speak the message and the language, then I think things will just be different.
You can have the best message, but if you're not reaching the audience and you're not helping people understand that who you are as a person is fine. We're not saying anything is wrong with you. My message is not against you. My message is to enhance all of us. But we also have to be honest about the perceptions that people have. And we have to also work against that in many ways. And so, yes, we have the message, but it's also how is the message being received or not being received?
Ali, in the 1970s, Donald Trump and his father were sued by the Department of Justice for failing to rent to African Americans. Specifically, looking at the applications, they put a C on there for representing colored, and that was a basis for denial. In the 80s, Donald Trump, in the wake of the exonerated five, took out the ad saying we should bring back the death penalty in response to them being charged with rape. Currently, as President Trump, he's rolling back DEI in the federal government and encouraging businesses to do that. How do you reconcile that voting for Trump when he's made race-based policies in comments towards people who look like you?
I think that nobody's perfect, and I would be willing to say if those were the cases, they were wrong, and that was something that shouldn't have been done. But I also think we have to, if we're going to look historically at which party was the party that voted against our right to vote, and that was the Democrats. If we're going to look at who historically has done more to benefit the black community from a policy perspective, we've been voting Democrat at 80, 90% a clip the last 60 years. And the results, lower education rates, less safe communities. So I think that I'd be willing, and a lot of people on my side of the aisle say, if he did that, that's wrong. Nobody should be denied housing on the basis of their race, color, gender. And nobody, I think, of good moral fiber would want to do that.
The attack on DEI is frankly, for me personally, I take the attack personally. I think when you think about the contributions that people of color in particular and black folks have made in our country, to be at this space that we're in right now is appalling. It is frankly appalling. For us to be in 2025 and not understand the need for diversity, the thing that makes us different from any other country in the world.
When we talk about I want the best qualified person, some people will look at that in the lens of biasness. The best qualified person could be, to you, this white man over here that has all these accolades because he went to Yale, over this black man who probably went to a HBCU. So you're going to think the person who went to Yale has the best accolades, and because of merit, they may get picked. And so that's one reason why we need DEI, to make sure that people are being able to be selected based upon their intelligence or their backgrounds, not because of the schools they went to or the families that they came from or nepotism. I'm a mother of a college student who goes to a PWI in upstate New York. So yes, and when Trump started rolling back all this stuff, I lose sleep at night. Hence one reason why I'm up at 3 a.m, because I'm like, I have a black son who's attending the school in upstate New York. So I'm fearful of things of the opportunities he may not receive.
This DEI push as it relates to race is brand new. 6 years ago, the term DEI had nothing to do with race. Its inception had to do with people with disabilities and in education. So I think what we're talking about here, when I hear DEI, what I'm hearing is forced racism. Meaning Martin Luther King said, we judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Some arbitrary skin color quota, I agree, we need diversity of skill set, we need diversity of thought, but we have to be mindful that it was not the Democrat Party it was not the Republican Party executive director that called out the white supremacy in a political party. It was the Mecklenburg County Democrat Party that did that, because the Democrat Party doesn't suffer thoughts or ideas of difference. They don't suffer people thinking differently. They don't prioritize minority leadership. David Hogg and the other guy are now the DNC chair and vice chair. Where's the diversity in that?
DEI is about understanding who people are, how people have not been represented fully, and how we need to do a better job of seeing the whole person. So if we're sitting here talking about holistic education and seeing people fully, and we're not talking about DEI, we're not talking about wanting to see the whole person. And that's just clear. Disability studies, critical disability studies is really important to DEI. Race and racial identities in the plural, those things are also important to DEI. We always focus on the diversity piece. We don't focus on the inclusivity piece. It's DEI for a reason. It is about critical inclusivity. It is about bringing people across their different identity categories into conversations about how to improve the world. And my question has to be, what are we so fearful about when we say diversity? But yet in the history of this country, all of our presidents before Barack Obama were white men, not even a white woman. I mean, we've got to talk about race. We've got to talk about DEI, because when we look at the political landscape of this entire country, all of our presidents have been white men until President Barack Obama. Not even a white woman. So we're talking race and we're talking gender. And if we are not willing to talk about DEI, we're not willing to also have open conversations about racial representation, about gender representation, religious, sexual, sex, and cultural representation. And I don't think that we should not have the conversations.
I think we should.
right.
I don't disagree with you, but I also point out it's like a 75% white country. I would expect that based on the history. I would expect that to happen.
But too often
I don't.
when we are talking about race, the interesting thing to me is that it always takes this different form when we're talking about including black people, right? So you can talk about race, but okay, black people, you've experienced that people have been hired because they're white.
Yes.
People have gotten to
be the president because they're white.
Because they're white. So once you say, but
So
then
you're saying it wasn't based on merit.
the dynamic. I'm saying you got it.
That's qualified.
So I'm saying it's not always based on merit, right? It's not always based on the most qualified. It hasn't. But any time when we're talking about people of color, that's where we take this divergence where, now it's all about qualifications. Now it's about this or it's about that. When really, what it's really about is exclusion. That's what it's about.
Stay with us. The State of the Black Vote, a Queen City News Black History Month special, continues next.
But anytime when we're talking about people of color, that's where we take this divergence where, now it's all about qualifications. Now it's about this or it's about that. When really, what it's really about is exclusion. That's what it's about. Because you know what? When you're in those rooms, and Dr. Kinlock and everybody on this panel can tell you, being in the room matters. If you don't think being in the room matters, you are missing it. Being in that room allows you to be the but for. You may be outnumbered, but you are the but for. But for Bree being there. But for Brother Abdul being there. But for Dr. Kinlock being there. What would have been the outcome? Because these are folks that are speaking what they're saying in public. They're saying it behind closed doors. They are fighting every day. And so it is very important that we have representation in these rooms. It is very important when policy is being discussed that people in the room are giving a lens that really impacts people on the ground. This is serious business. If you want to play with words about diversity, equity, inclusion, you can play with words all day long. People have to stand up and say, yes, we are better because of diversity. We are better because of equity. We are better because we are being included.
I mean, look, Chicago's not better. They've had back-to-back black mayors. LA's not better. They have a black mayor. Our community, we have black police chiefs. The crime rates ain't going down. This idea that somehow just having black people there is going to make it better is clearly that those two things don't equate.
But I don't think that's
But I think you're missing the point. Yeah, I don't think that's what he's saying.
But
he just said.
No, what I'm
Does it make it worse?
No, what I'm saying is the fact of the matter is we have representation. This idea that we're not represented is not true. We have more black mayors. We have more black people in Congress now. We have all the blackness we can do. Where is this? We're represented.
But we need to keep building upon that.
What I'm saying
The point is, it is not just about, I think what you're saying is also about the structures and the systems that are in place that have excluded people from being able to engage in the revolutionary radical change that we need to have in the world. We're not sitting here counting how many black folk are in the room. I mean, we're not sitting here counting how many men are in the room. We're not sitting here counting and saying, I need 2 more of you. We're not doing that. It is understanding that when we have a diverse group of people from racial, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender backgrounds, we can figure out how systems and policies have been so exclusionary and have leaned toward a certain group of folks over others. That's just what we're saying. So it's not about counting. It is about looking at a whole system and understanding how to improve that system for the people who have historically been excluded from that system.
It's the isms. It's the isms that are keeping people where they are. And some people have a hard time getting out of that. If you don't see better, how can you be better?
So you mentioned about, people on the ground and getting out in the community. Historically, Black women have held the brunt of that, have been out in the community getting people out to vote. But now under the Trump administration, Black women are taking a step back. They're saying, I'm focused on my mental health. It's not our fight. Bree and Dr. Kinlock, as Black women, question is a little twofold. How does taking a step back impact the Black vote, Black women, and democracy moving forward? But also, is that step back needed?
I will say I have been one of those people that took a step back. I have been relaxing since November 15th when I came home from D.C., from the campaign. I think it's a matter of, we voted 92%. But at what instance are you going to appreciate the fact that we're putting all this effort out there? Like, there should be more Black women in political leadership. An example, we had Vice President Kamala Harris. She is a well-qualified, educated, smart woman. But that message in her, who she is as a person, did not resonate with a lot of people. So it's like, okay, we're voting, we're on the front lines. Even during the civil rights movement, the Black women were the ones preparing the food for you to eat because you couldn't stop at the restaurants in the South, right? So it's like, when is stuff like that going to be recognized?
I think it's nuanced. I don't think that we're taking a step back. I think we can do more than one thing at the same time. Mm-hmm. I think that we can rest and rejuvenate as we also advocate and activate ourselves and our communities to understand the pressing issues that have always confronted our communities. And so on the one hand, I think it's really, we need to focus on the importance of taking care of ourselves, the importance of understanding the social, political, educational context in which we're in. But at the same time, we've not stopped working. We've not stopped advocating. We haven't literally taken a step back without doing anything else. We are still showing up. We're still working. We're still going to the polls. We're still on social media. We're still sitting here having a conversation about why these issues are important. And so I just think that we need to really nuance the conversations about what it means to take a step back. We can take a step back and recover at the same time that we're critically engaging in these ideas with other people. And I think this panel here is an example of that.
Stay with us. The State of the Black Vote, a Queen City News Black History Month special, continues next.
Dr. Kinlock, staying on education, how do you teach and instill Black civil engagement to a generation that seems disengaged in this era?
Oh, now that's a great question. That's a great question. I think the first thing that I would say is I don't think our young people are disengaged. I don't. I work with them every single day of my life. I do not think young people are disengaged. I think that the perception that young people are disengaged is a thing that proliferates across our media, across our communities, across the world. And so when we start the conversation by saying, who are young people? Asking our young people, what are the values you have? I know what my values are, but what are your values? And we should be able to have conversations and critical conversations and discussions about your values in relation to my values without leaving the room in disagreement.
And it's important that you have the right people speaking these messages. I remember in 2020, in South Carolina, I spent a lot of times going into, let's just say, pool halls. Friday nights after 7 is where a lot of Black men are. Pool halls, barbershops, if you want their vote, you need to go where they are. So it's important to meet people where they are and speak the language.
But the conversations in our communities, she hit the nail on the head. You have to go to the barbershop. You have to go to the beauty shop. You got to go to the church picnic. We got to have community leaders like the good doctor here that's willing to let her students engage in dialogue. You got to have county commissioners like the good brother here that's willing to say, hey, that's a good idea. I didn't think about it that way, and be willing to work across the aisle. But I think as people see us as community leaders and as we're able to do that, that'll trickle down.
That sounds a little like diversity.
It does. I was going to say that. I was just asking.
That sounds a little bit like diversity to me, so I would agree.
But it has to be natural. There's a difference in between saying you will do this and it has to be natural. I mean, I shudder to think Barack Obama became the president just because he was a Black guy. I cringed when my Republican friend said Kamala Harris was a DEI hire. I cringed at that because here we're talking about an accomplished woman who was ended up being the Attorney General of that's not, you don't become an Attorney General by being an idiot.
Right. Which make it the interview because of DEI policies.
I mean, maybe.
I could agree with a platform or a piece of a platform that talks about fiscal responsibility, right? I manage my household budget a particular way. In addition to that, though, the social issues are very important to me from a historical perspective and what I see that's going on right now. You should not have fear for your son just because but your fear is based because he is a black man in this environment that he has to try to navigate. I'm sure you have given him so many talks, your husband and you have had to talk to him about interactions and our friends on the right always talk about there's no such thing as systemic racism. It's always interesting to me, though, no matter where you live in this country, you got to give your son the talk. Mm-hmm. We have to give our children the talk on how to interact with some of our law enforcement personnel. Why? No matter where you go, you have to give that same talk. It's systemic. There's a culture that is pervasive that many of us are trying to fight against, and we'll fight with you.
On that note, we would love to have the conversation continue, but stay with us. The State of the Black Vote, a Queen City News Black History Month special, continues right after this. Thank you for joining us for this discussion of the Black vote and the future of the Black voice in an ever-changing political landscape.
We hope you continue this conversation in your homes with your friends, family, and the community to ensure it's not lost in the fight for democracy.
On behalf of Queen City News, thanks for watching and honoring Black History Month.